Good morning. Welcome to the CUNA Advocacy Update. I'm Ryan Donovan, CUNA's Chief Advocacy Officer. It's August 3rd, 2020. Here are 4 things that you need to know about credit union advocacy this week. Negotiations over the COVID-19 recovery package continue in Congress. We've got an action alert out on the PPP forgiveness bill. The nomination of Kyle Hopman to be a member of the National Credit Union Administration Board goes before the Senate Banking Committee this week for a vote. And Vice President Biden is expected to announce his vice presidential nomination in the coming days. The House is out of session this week and the Senate is in session, but what's happening off the floors of the chamber is more important this week than what's happening on the floor. Over the weekend, congressional leaders and White House officials continued their negotiations over the next round of COVID recovery legislation as temporary unemployment benefits for millions of Americans expired. As we've discussed over the last few weeks, credit union priorities in this package are pretty straightforward. We want Congress to extend the temporary CARES Act provisions regarding troubled debt restructuring, the central liquidity facility, and share insurance. We'd also like to see Congress enact some capital relief for credit unions that were well capitalized coming into the crisis but have taken hits on capital since then. A major focus of this round of recovery legislation is making sure that the forgiveness process for the Paycheck Protection Program is easier. We've been working closely with Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota to streamline the process for PPP loans under $150,000. These loans represent more than 80% of all PPP loans and about 20% of loan volume. Making it easier for these loans to be forgiven will reduce burdens on credit unions and small businesses while protecting the integrity of the broader PPP program. Senator Cramer was gracious with his time last week, meeting with hundreds of PPP credit unions and league officials. And we have an action alert out in support of his legislation. You can find more information about that in our Grassroots Action Alert Center at CUNA.org. Here's what you need to keep in mind about our priorities in the context of the negotiations taking place right now. The major debate right now focuses on liability protection, state and local government funding, and unemployment insurance. PPP issues, the forgiveness issue, as well as extending the program in general, are secondary issues. Extending the CARES Act provisions are considered relatively non-controversial, and adding new banking policy like the PCA flexibility is being discussed, but it's not clear whether there's going to be new banking policy in this legislation. The hierarchy of these issues is important, because once the big rocks are decided, things could move relatively quickly. So what we're doing right now through the PPP Action Alert and through targeted advocacy on our other priorities is working to make sure that our issues are in good shape when the broader package is ready to move. This process, like most legislative development, is very opaque. We look for signs and signals when assessing where we stand. And since we never really know, it's critical that we keep pushing. So if you're a PPP credit union, now is the time to engage your businesses that you helped and ask them to contact your representatives and senators in support of the PPP forgiveness legislation. Even though the sides appear very far apart on the broader framework of the deal, there's a good chance that the legislation is going to come into focus in the coming days or the next week or so. And as I mentioned, once that happens, once they have an agreement on those big rocks, things can move pretty quickly. I do want to mention that CUNA will be filing comments on 3 regulatory proposals this week. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency is interested in making sure it's aware of and understands the evolution of financial services, so it ensures that the banking system continues to serve consumers, businesses, and communities effectively. Further, banks must have a regulatory and supervisory framework that enables them to adapt to rapidly changing trends and technology developments in the financial marketplace to meet consumers' evolving needs while they continue to operate in a safe and sound manner. So they have a request for information out on National Bank and Federal Savings Association digital activities, We're going to be commenting on that, and the proposals on that are due today. The CFPB has proposed to amend Regulation F, which implements the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, to create required consumer disclosures for debts that are time barred. Comments are due on that proposal tomorrow. The CFPB has also proposed to amend Regulation Z, which implements the Truth in Lending Act. The proposal generally would address the sunset of LIBOR, which is expected to be discontinued in 2021, and the proposed rule would change open-end and closed-end provisions to provide examples of replacement indices for LIBOR indices that meet certain regulatory Z standards. Comments on this proposal are due tomorrow as well. And you can find more information regarding these proposals as well as other regulations that are open for comment on our website at cuna.org. Finally, as we look ahead, there are two things that should be on your radar screens. First, on Wednesday, the Senate Banking Committee will vote on the nomination of Kyle Hopman to be a member of the National Credit Union Administration Board. This vote was to have taken place last week, but it was delayed because of an Armed Services Committee markup scheduled at the same time. We expect the Hopman nomination to clear the committee, which should set up a confirmation vote by the full Senate as early as next week. Also, keep an eye on the Biden campaign. The former vice president was expected to announce his vice presidential nominee this week. There's been some suggestions that that could slip until next week. In any case, we're getting closer to knowing what the Democratic ticket will look like in the upcoming election. And once we do, we'll take some time in this space to walk through some various scenarios of what the election outcomes might mean for credit union advocacy. That's it this week. Thanks for taking time to join me for this advocacy update. I hope you found it helpful, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns.